Hey Wyatt the Word Weaver here. This is going to be the first vlog of the new season, this period of content. I haven't done a vlog in a very long time. Haven't done unscripted content. Very nervous about it. Sweating bullets. Just utterly destroying my carpet with sweat. I'm back in the Nook. That's the door. That is the recording door that leads to my magical hiding place where I keep my guns, and totally not my bathroom. Um and yeah, I'm just sitting on the floor with the microphone stacked on some books. I bought a $9 pop filter off of Amazon, and that thing just doesn't work. So gonna have to spring a little more money, which probably should have done in the first place, but I am not a smart boy. So we're gonna talk unscripted. This is what we're going to be doing. I think we're gonna have vlog, video essay, vlog, or not a vlog, but like some sort of non-video essay content. Don't worry if you're into me for the video essays. These are not going to take up a lot of time. I want them all to take like 3 days of work tops. Um, and it's just kind of, I think it's going to allow me to sort of connect to y'all a little less, little like less formally, and more conveniently, and also like force me to experiment with new stuff and grow as an artist, which is of course always the point of this channel, right? Or one of the points. So, uh, yeah, in my Wyatt the Word Weaver third annual channel analysis video, the big finale reveal of that video is the reason that I didn't make any videos for 10 months is that during a good chunk of that period, I was writing a book. And I did indeed write a book. Here it is, printed out. The book is around 112,000 words, and I printed it out to be around like 350 pages, 1.5 space, 12-point font. Here are some of said pages. It's got, as you can see, paragraphs and chapters and sentences, and so this was a thing. I sat down for about 6 months and I wrote a book, and it was one of the most influential experiences I've ever had in my life, and I wanted to talk about it, and because it changed me more than I thought it would, and also like I learned a surprising amount like from doing this. Probably more than I've ever learned doing any single video. So let's go through some stuff. All right, let's start with some deep Wyatt lore. So ever since I was about I have always read. Ever since I was like, I learned to read when I was like 5 or 6. To read a Pokemon book. And then some Transformers novels are what really kicked me over the edge to reading. So starting really when I was 9 is when I started like tearing through books. Guardians of Ga'Hoole was like the first thing I was into. I don't know if you ever heard of the books with the owls. I read all 15 of them when I was a kid. I was mad into that. Yeah, read Warrior Cats, read Harry Potter, Artemis Fowl, Bartimaeus, everything Percy Jackson, and a bunch of Rick Riordan's other stuff. Tons of Star Wars novels. I'm looking at my bookshelf. The Chronicles of Nick. Oh yeah, Secrets of the Moral Nicholas Flamel. Did I already mention that? I don't even. And like later in time, and get into high school. Oh, The Inheritance Cycle. Eventually, I read like Song of Ice and Fire. Tons of Michael Crichton. I went through a huge Michael Crichton phase. If you've never read Jurassic Park, you need to read Jurassic Park. I promise you, don't just forget everything you know about the movie. It's a page burner. Some Tom Clancy. Anyway, So around the age of 14, like end of 8th grade, is when I get my first ideas for a story, like something that, and then, as a kid, I didn't have a lot of friends. I spent a lot of time walking around on the playground alone, and I would just sort of like walk around and look up at the sky and take little clips of Pokemon episodes or Yu-Gi-Oh episodes or like Powerpuff Girls, and I would just sort of like mix it up in my head and sort of make new stories. I would put me and my friends in little crazy like Harry Potter fantasy adventures, but none of these were unique. When I was 14, I got my own like first like quasi unique-ish story. It was kind of like a Batman ripoff that just involved putting me and my friends in these weird adventures, but it was like a concept. And throughout high school, I started writing parts of this, and this was like way too ambitious. When I'm 15, I'm like, all right, it's gonna be a 6-book series, and like it's gonna have this massive arc. It's gonna take place, of course, 30 years, and you have characters who are gonna age, and like there's gonna be generational conflict. And what I would do is I would write like certain scenes. I was really into writing fight scenes, drama scenes. I probably wrote like 50 to 80 pages of, and this is not writing books. These are writing scenes that were in my head. And like it would just get stuck in my head and would just like need to get out. And I would write this out on like some paper in like 10th, 11th grade. But nothing really came of it because I never wanted to sit down and actually be like, all right, so this is page 1, chapter 1, and like start, right? Like I never knew how to actually like make this a thing. When I was graduating high school, shortly around when I entered college, I got the idea for like a single novel, and this would be a story that would be self-contained to one book, just to the end, one single story. And to me, that sounded a lot better, a lot easier to attack. At this point, I kind of knew I wanted to write books, or at least I enjoyed doing this. I'd had some people, a few of my mentors, telling me to write books for a long time. And this book, it was called Chains. That was what it was supposed to be. And Chains was supposed to be like my magnum opus. Like it was supposed to be this epic story of these two people. There was a lot of crying, a lot of melodrama, a lot of statements about like the nature of man. And it was supposed to be like me making my mark on the world. And I got about 58,000 words deep, which, funnily now does not seem like a lot, but at the time it was a massive amount. It was probably about 6 months of on and off work. I'm doing this while I'm doing the YouTube channel and while I'm a full-time student. Though I did not take my student. Me going to college was a terrible idea. I did not like it. I did not do well. Well, I did well in some stuff. But, so yeah, I get 58,000 words deep into this, and I get stuck. Now, it's hard to explain why I stopped. There are several short answers, like, the book started to decline in quality, like, the stuff I was writing was getting less good. I started running into parts of the story that I didn't know was going to happen. Like, it was kind of like hard for me to determine. I'll get into this later, but certain parts of the story you have when you're going in, certain parts you kind of make up as you go along. And I hit a wall essentially, and it all kind of it became very stressful. It became like a heavy burden on me, and around the end of 2018. I abandoned it, and I put it on hiatus. It still exists. I reread some of it recently. It's really bad, or at least, it's been 2 years, so, like, my writing's gotten a lot more sophisticated since then, and, like, it's funny, the paragraphs are, like, I've shrunken my paragraphs by, like, half. The paragraphs are really blocky, makes it really hard to read, and, but it's not the worst thing in the world. There's potential there. There's stuff that's perhaps worth revisiting. So anyway, around April of 2018, just as I'm exiting college, I get an idea for a fantasy novel. And I go and I write about 7,000 words of 3 chapters and a prologue. I used to do this a lot. I still kind of do. I call it prototyping. And what it essentially is just like writing the beginning of a story and just seeing if like it's kind of like a proof of concept. Like if you're an engineer or or you're a craftsman, it's kind of like a model, a prototype. It's sort of like, this is what it might look like. And at the time, I didn't really know where the story would go after that. And also, I was still writing Chains, and I was like, okay, well, this might be a fun thing to pick up later. And I just left it. About 6 months later, in November, I don't know how inspiration, creativity works for people. Here's how I get ideas. Especially when I was younger. This doesn't happen to me so more now, because I think this is kind of a mark of an amateur rather than a professional. As you sort of do this more often, you don't rely on these big bursts of creativity as much as a measured drip of creativity. But they get these little sparks of creativity where suddenly, like 95% of the work will get done in like 20 minutes. And it's this massive like explosion where like suddenly like everything will come together. And what happened was I got the ending to this fantasy novel. Let's call it that. Fantasy novel. This is the book I am referring to. This fantasy novel. Let's call it that. And I get the idea for the ending. And I get a clue of what I want it to be. Now, here's a piece of advice. Don't write a story unless you know how it ends. I just think that's a really bad idea. You can point to a lot of, especially in television, this because shows up as a problem in a lot of things. But don't write a story if you don't know how it ends. So anyway, I got the ending and I liked the ending, and I actually wrote the ending. I ended up rewriting this, but I wrote a solid like 5,000 words, 4,000 word ending, and this was like the end, like final fight, big things happen, characters arcs wrap up, and then just it's over. And I liked it. Like, this was good. It was really good. Some of the best stuff I had ever written, and I was like, this is hot. And I was like, well, I have a prologue and 3 chapters, and I have an ending. So why don't I just, like, go, fill in the blanks? And that, to me, felt like a very accomplishable task. And so I do this off and on until about July of 2019, where I decide to put the channel on hiatus and make this the only thing I do. And I was still writing a few other things until October, where I was like, all right, I'm not writing scripts, I'm not writing poetry, I'm not doing anything that I do. I am just going to write this book. And I pretty much only creatively wrote the book for about 3 to 4 months. And it was done in around late mid-December. Let's talk about writing a novel, how you do it, how you plan it out, and mistakes that I made. Most major mistake that I ever made was I did not make an outline. When you're in school and you're being taught how to write an essay, they're like, make an outline. And see, I have this massive curse growing up where I had this thing called talent, and I was really good at writing essays, and I would always get like a 90, 95 or 100 on them. So like, I never planned. I never wrote an outline. I just like went, and like it worked, and like everyone was like, "You're a genius!" And like, it's nothing worse in this world than being called a genius. Anyway, so I've never planned anything, and I didn't make an outline or a plan for this novel. Which if you read the book now, like, there are definite flaws in the book that need to be corrected that come from that, and I'm going to come back to that in a bit. What I did do is I did make a dramatis personae, I typed out about all 6 or 7 of the main characters, and I just wrote up what they were like, their height, what they looked like, their personalities, what their character arc vaguely resembled. And what I should have done is I should have written a plot summary. I should have written about the world. It's because this is a fantasy novel. It's nation states, the fantasy animals I put in it, how the magic system works. I didn't write down any of that. And a consequence of this is that a lot in the novel is inconsistent and needs to be fixed. So, for instance, like, you know, when you write a book, all right, no matter how much of a genius you are, unless you're Nisi Oisin, writing a novel is going to be a multi-month endeavor, okay? It's gonna take a while. You cannot sit down in a single setting and write a novel. By the way, so I said this novel was 112,000 words. That's just a number that might sound a little like what is even that? Okay, so the Magic the Gathering video that I put out recently is 3,000 words. My Roy Mustang video is around 5,000 words. Hunger Games. The book is longer than Hunger Games and shorter than Twilight. If that gives you a clue, how many words that is. It's much shorter than like a Song of Ice and Fire entry. Maybe longer than your average novel for high schoolers. By the way, the book will probably, obviously I'll get into this later. It's not ready for commercial. It's not publish ready, and by the time that it is publish ready, it will probably be cut down, by at least by some part significantly. If not by me, then by other editors. But I do think there is fat that can be trimmed just to make the novel more lean and mean and consistent. But yeah, so like, say I was in this city called I don't know, Beantown, all right? So I say, oh, well, we're walking into Beantown, and then you go to sleep, and you wake up, and you're like, what was this place that what did I name? It's called Carrotville. Okay, and so they're walking through the markets of Carrotville, seeing these people's beautiful carrots, and it's like, but you just named it Beantown, like the last chapter. Well, I forgot. So that would happen, and some of it I fixed. I did not get to fix all of it, which is a problem. But it made it kind of confusing for some of my test readers. But yeah, so so say you have a character named Garrett Smith, and you say his name's Garrett Smith in chapter 2. You're like, this is Garrett Smith. He's a private eye. But then you always call him Garrett in your story, and then you're on chapter 17. You're like, wait, what the heck is this guy's last name? This is one of the things that I discovered in this process. It's kind of, being an author has sort of made me take authorial intent a little less seriously. And it's made me, believe less in the idea of what the author says purely as canon, because the author can forget and mix up things all the time, like I did. So definitely write down what everyone's name is, create a master document of all your proper, like a separate document, or even just like some notes you have written down next to you of like what all the proper nouns are, because you will forget. Trust me. When you write a story, you have to get from 1 to 2. And maybe, so if 1 is our start and 2 is our end, then maybe 1.1, 1.2, what happens in our first step. Maybe 1.5, what's our big midpoint, like a big battle you want to put in your story. Maybe 1.8, like what's our big, like, climax. But maybe you don't have 1.4, maybe you don't have 1.3, maybe you don't have 1.15. And so there were definitely parts of the story where I was like, I don't really know what happens here. I'm just gonna like have to figure it out. There were parts of the story that were like walking through the fog. And this is what really set this book apart from other failed projects in the past, is that I didn't just write the big dramatic scenes where characters cry or talk about their feelings or they stab each other with swords. I wrote the slower plotting scenes. I'm going to talk about that in a second. And that was actually some of the most surprisingly compelling and most enriching work I have ever done. And pushing through that fog, it always felt right. It always felt good. And I basically like part of the reasons I was able to do this, like how did you? I'm sure some of you are thinking, how did you sit down and write 112,000 words? Well, it was fun. Like it felt good the entire time. I was like, I am enjoying this process. It's better than sex. Um, it was a good way to spend my time. I enjoyed myself. What I'm saying is, when you're writing a story, do not worry about um, like if you don't have the whole thing, you will figure it out as you go. Like, say you're writing chapter 1 and you don't know what happens in chapter 4. Well, you'll probably know what happens in chapter 4 once you write chapter 3. That often is like what happened. Like, as I moved like as you walk down the path, you can start to see further in front of you, and you get over a hill and you can start to see through the fog. So just because like you don't know, like, again, not always, but like try and have an ending destination in mind, and like a character arc of like what the points you want to hit in this story of how these people change. You don't always have to like stick to that, but at least try and have that, and then just sort of go to connect the dots. Um, and have some faith in yourself that you'll push through, because you probably can. So, um, one thing about this is that, all right, so here's just a point of advice that I did. I opened on a battle. I opened on a fight scene, just two armies clashing. Always open on action, or always open on something interesting. Remember, when people want to read your book, you have to hook them immediately. I fundamentally believe in dropping stuff quickly. Like, if something's not hooking you, don't watch it, don't read it. Like, if you open a book and the first page is not interesting, toss it in the trash. You know, no piece of art deserves your time. Your time is incredibly valuable. Like no, if I'm watching an anime and I don't like the first scene, not always, but like I'll often turn it off. Like if I screw the 3 episodes test, screw the 1 episode test. If the first 5 minutes aren't compelling and interesting, um, it's not worth watching. And now that doesn't mean there has to be fighting or intrigue, but there has to be something to hook your audience. You can hook your audience in myriad different ways. I'm not saying that you need to like throw violence in front of the camera or action, though a lot of people do that, and that can often be very good. But one thing you'll often note is that a good show, a good book, a good movie, a good anything will have something just immediately to like get you in, and you need to do that. You need to addict yourself, and you need to addict your audience. Okay, so there's a lot of different types of authors. I am a character guy. I like people. I like making them. I like crafting them. I like creating them. That's one thing I'll talk about in a second. I am not a world building guy. That's one. I can do it. It's very, very hard. So there are some authors that like exploring philosophical concepts. There are certain people who like George R.R. Martin is a world builder. Okay, that is what the guy is good at. J.K. Rowling is really good at A, creating whimsical fantasy, and B, doing suspense filler stuff. She kind of sucks at a lot of other things, but like those are her like two big strengths, right? There are certain people who are really good at world building. And then you have people like, say, a Nishio Scene or a Gen Urobuchi, where you're like, well, Gen Urobuchi can do both, but who's like a brilliant character, who wrote Full Metal Alchemist? Need a whole video about this. Okay, her, yeah, people who are really brilliant at like crafting characters, and like the world of Full Metal Alchemist is like kind of. I'm not gonna call it bad, but it's kind of like generic and sort of like, it's just like another version of Europe. But like that's not Amestris is not the point. Our characters are the point. Though I kind of Amestris is actually some really brilliant politics. I take that back. Okay, I write characters. I like characters. I started this book because I thought of a character that I liked. And then I was like, crap, this is fantasy. So 3 years ago, I thought I would never write. 2 years ago, I thought I would never write fantasy. It just didn't seem like my thing. I didn't have the ideas for it. But I found myself writing fantasy, and I was like, man, I'm gonna have to come up with like different creatures and like a magic system and whole nation states. This is gonna be hard, and it was. Um, I did some. I took some shortcuts to make it easier. Shortcut number one, I set my story in a military expedition hiking through the wilderness. So I placed the bulk of my story takes place far away from cities and big populous centers. There's some towards the end, but that gave me time to like make stuff up. So like, there's a lot of the book that is just characters hiking through the woods, and doing shenanigans there. That allowed me. It bought me time to like figure out what the world is, and you learn weird things about yourself. Like, okay, for instance, I learned that whenever I want to like make up a fantasy name, I tend to like lean on K's, Kirkendall, Kaishin Falls. I do K's. For some reason, K's sound fantasy like to me. And so yeah, world building is very hard. I didn't draw out a map. I probably should have, just like for myself. It actually recently it occurred to me. I'm writing the sequel right now. It occurred to me that I actually, if I want to make everything make sense, I need to switch east to west and west to east. I need to like flop the map. Otherwise, it's not gonna. It's gonna be dumb. like the big flaws can be in your story, and you can still like have your rough draft done. To be clear, this is a rough draft. I'm gonna get that in a second. So yeah, I had to make a whole fantasy world. I had to create, because this and it sounds like I'm complaining, like, oh, it was so hard to create. And yeah, I am kind of complaining. It was tough. I didn't really want to do it, but I wanted to write this story, and this is what the story requires. Like, come up with, all right. So say you have a kingdom, the kingdom of Fallen. The kingdom of Fallen. Okay, what's the government? Oh, it's a monarchy. Okay, well, who's in charge? Is a king or a queen in charge? Okay, well, how do they make laws? Is there a judiciary? Like, how does the military work? How do their military hierarchies work? What do people sell? What do people eat? What do people, suddenly you've got this massive, like, make a civilization. This is difficult. And one thing I learned is that exposition dumps are hard to write. Not only are they hard to write, but they're hard to write well. Like, it's, right, remember, the most important thing about your book, about your anything, like, people will find the characters or the concepts in your book interesting, but beyond all of that, the most important thing is that it's well written, right? Like, it has to be engaging, it has to be good. You have to, like, look at this on the page and be like, I want to continue reading this. Everything else is completely inconsequential compared to the quality of your writing. And when you're just having a character spout off facts for 12 pages, it's hard to maintain quality. One thing I did is I had, it be a conversation. So have the other person, like, constantly asking questions. But it's also boring just to have a character, like, talk about stuff. It takes a lot of work. Exposition scenes are harder than fight scenes. For me personally, to write, I'm sure for a lot of authors, especially people to whom world building comes a lot more naturally, it's different. But for me, I'm really good at writing characters and kinetic action. I was a martial artist for a while. I study fight scenes. I really like them. Violence is good, and you should do it. So yeah, like, those scenes were really easy to write. Like, you just put on. I would put on, like, I wrote a lot of the fight scenes listening to a loop of the Mass DDD theme from the Kirby series, which, if you've ever, that's good music to write a fight scene to. Not to write the regular book. I wrote a lot of the regular book listening to various loops of Monogatari music. Sanpo, Kizuna, Kaiki Deishu's theme. That's good. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind when you're writing your book, this is just what I'm just giving advice now, is you need to balance exposition. I wrote notes of how I'm gonna do this video on my phone. Exposition, drama, action, and chill. So like one thing I would do is I would have like a super like dramatic point, and I would end the chapter. And the next chapter is like a person being like, so how does this work? And then like, so now we're in a dry action scene. Or like, so you have like a big sword fight, and then you have characters like relax and talk. So because you can't have your audience be too tense for too long, and you also can't bore them. So you need to balance these elements. I'm gonna move a little faster through my notes. Okay. Chapters. Chapters are weird. Why do chapters exist? Chapters exist not for the authors. Chapters do not exist for the author. Chapters exist for the reader. They make the book easier to consume. They are a consumer-based thing. I find the chapters in my book weird. Some of them are like 6,000 words. Some of them are 1,000 words. They are definitely uneven. And it's like, what is a chapter? Is a chapter a scene? Is a chapter a day? One like cliche I noticed in my writing is I have a really bad habit of opening chapters with a character waking up, which is like really easy. Like the chapter ends when they go to sleep and it begins when they wake up. Super, but like once you do it 12 times, you start realizing it's kind of a crutch, and you're like, oh, maybe I should fix this. So, yeah. When you end a chapter, there's basically two. I realize there's basically two types of chapter endings. You can end a chapter. A chapter, you can intend it to be the end of a reader's reading session, because obviously most people aren't going to read your book in a single sitting, and if they do, it means it's not particularly healthy. I'm gonna flip through to try and find like a closing. Perhaps this time she would ask him. Perhaps this time she would ask him everything. Yeah, so each of your chapters, like, you can't just, like, stop. Like, that's one thing I found. Like, you gotta, like, you gotta end it. So, like, you have to make this sort of, like, quasi-conclusive, the only thing for him to do was to pray for sleep as his own mind drowned him deeper and deeper. But yeah, you have to like, and sometimes sometimes the thing I came up with was like really convoluted and like hokey sounding. But yeah, you have to concluding chapters is weird. But there's other types of chapters where you ended on like a hook, like they heard a scream in the distance, and so like now you're because you're hooking and you're going into the next chapter. Think of it as like combos, like a fighting game, like you combo. So like you lead into the next thing, and this way, so we can think of the hooks as speeding up your story and the closures as slowing down your story. You definitely cannot speed up all the time. That is exhausting for the audience. You should not do it. And by the way, these are not like these are things I learned while I was doing this process. Like I did this without even thinking about it, and now I identified it, and now I'm talking to you about it. So let's move on. Okay. I know I told you that I wrote the ending and that, but okay. I wrote that, but then I wrote chapter 1 to chapter 39. I forget. I forget. I think there's like 38 chapters in the book. I could check, but I'm not going to. All right. I would suggest not writing your book out of order. Now, if your story takes place out of chronological order, that's a totally different subject. By the way, I'm not smart enough to do that. But if you're doing that, that's a totally different subject. But I would suggest you write the book in the order that you want to do it. Otherwise, you're just making things harder on yourself. That's all I'm saying. Okay, characters. You do not know the characters of your book until you are done writing them. Until you are done writing the book. Rereading the book, I find the first 12, 13 chapters, a lot of the interactions between the characters to be stilted, to be awkward. That's because I really didn't know who they were yet. I didn't know the quirks of their personalities. It was not until chapter 16, by the way, the book is a romance. It is supposed to involve two people falling in love. It wasn't until chapter 17 of the book where like I wrote something and I was like, bam! That was chemistry. That was them. They felt, boom, I got it. And like one of the most fascinating parts of the book to write for me was like there was a chapter where I didn't really intend to, but I just started talking about what this character, like what she plans to do with her life, like how she views relationships, if she wants kids, what like if he wants kids, or what he wants in a partner. So yeah, when you're making a character, I would definitely suggest eventually thinking about not only their personality traits, like are they cautious or are they brash? Are they good with people or are they kind of a jackass? Um, what do they want to do in 5 years? Do they want kids? Do they want a partner? How do they? What's their politics like? Like how and why? Like, do they trust power? Or do they question power naturally? Um, how do they see themselves? Do they have a positive attitude towards themselves, or do they think they're kind of shit? Or do they think they're better than other people? These are all questions you should ask, and they help make your characters better people. And one of the reasons that when I plan on going back and rewriting and revising part of this book is, now that I know the characters better, I'm gonna be able to like make some of their earlier interactions make a little more sense. And that leads us to why I personally believe, having now written a book, that you should not publish a story chapter by chapter. That would be a really bad idea. I know some people who do it. I know fan fiction is usually published like that. And I don't want to put shade on anyone who's done this, but it just does not sound like a good idea. So let's talk about revision. All right, this book is a rough cut. It's a rough draft. It is not ready for consumption. You cannot read it. I'm not going to let you read it. If you message me wanting it, not going to happen. Because like if I release it now, I would get laughed at. It's bad. It's not good. I don't think it's a complete and ready product. Certainly not worth people paying for it. Which would be nice one of these days. So here are my plans for revision. I've given the book to about half a dozen 8 test readers. And I made this an equal male-female split because I really wanted men and women's opinions about the book, especially because the book has a female main character. I thought it was very important to get a woman's opinion. Test readers are important because you need to know what your audience is thinking and feeling at every part of your story. If you write a chapter where a person's supposed to feel sad, but instead of feeling sad, they just like feel like they think it's funny, that's important. Like you've screwed up, and now you need to know you've screwed up. And obviously, you need a bigger sample size. You know, that's like maybe the person you gave it to is like just a psychopath, or maybe they were bored. And also like it's very fascinating. All the people I give the book to, different parts of it stand out to them, and it's interesting. And maybe like one idea that you have like really resonates with like everyone who reads the book, and you're like, okay, maybe I'll go into that a little deeper. This is not like a quality check, and this is not also a peer review. I am not saying you need, obviously it can be helpful, but you don't necessarily need to have your book read by people who are also like writers or professionals. That can be very important, and I'm not degrading the importance of that. I only have so many people like on me who will read my stuff who I trust. So like, obviously I'm kind of restrained in that way. But, you know, if you are writing your first book and you're starting out, maybe you shouldn't have a person who's like hypercritical and hyper like super smart read your book. And the reason for that, maybe you should just have your parent, your friend, your lover read your book. And the reason for that is encouragement. Like someone telling you your stuff is good is obviously getting critiques is very important, but that's important when you're like trying to like professionally do it, or you're trying to get there. When you're just starting out and like just to have the drive, because like this is hard. Sitting down writing 2,000 words a day, 3,000 words a day, it's hard. By the way, it's also draining. I think I maxed out at around, some of you guys are going to laugh at me and call me a pussy, and you're going to be right, but I generally max out. Generally, I start running out of steam around 2,600. Not that I, and right now I'm actually like kind of trying to get back to that. Not that I would do that every day, but like around 3,200 words, I am done. My brain is fried, and I can't freaking. It's funny because some people are gonna watch this video and they'll be like, 3,200 words in one day. Holy shit! How does any human being do that? Other people are gonna be like, that's fucking pussy shit. Um, because people are at different skill levels, right? So yeah, you need encouragement. You need people to tell you it's good. You need people who are excited in your book because you need to be excited in your book, and like that's what's gonna get you to finish. Um. So here, how I plan to. So I'm gonna get the feedback from the test readers. What they Also, you need to know like if there's a fight scene, like can the person picture it in their head? That's like the most important thing. What were they confused by? These are important bits of feedback. What did they not get? Like, what didn't make sense? These are important stuff. Take that test reader feedback. This is going to start in around March. I'm going to reread the book myself. And I'm going to make a list of, like, needed changes. Now, I told you that, like, while writing this book, I didn't have a strong outline. So there's a lot of, like, plot threads that just, like, go nowhere. And there's a lot of holes. And imagine that I built a chair. Like, I took wood and I hammered it together. And I made a chair you can sit in. But I still need to, like, sand it and like paint it and lacquer it so it's actually like it looks like a chair that's comfortable to sit in and like looks good and you can like sell. So yeah, the first revision is essentially just going to be a fixing of character motivations, cutting off the plot threads that go nowhere, also reinforcing the planting and payoff. So like for instance, in chapter like 6, I'll like have a character like put a knife in their belt. And then, like, in chapter 20, I'll have them pull out the knife and stab somebody with it. But, like, the reader probably forgot the knife was there because I hadn't, like, reminded them of it. And maybe even I forgot about it, right? So, fixing planting and payoff is, like, a thing that also needs to be done. So, really just, like if the book is like this now, we're going to smooth it out. So, it's a single, smoother thing. A second thing of revision would be to just to go back and make sure every sentence is as good as possible. That would obviously take a lot of time and a lot of effort. And this leads us to the big question that everyone asks me. Everyone in my family, all of my friends. So when are you going to get it published? And, I don't know. And I don't care. Let's dig a little deeper. So, making money off of this would be more of a dream come true than I could ever imagine. Being a paid author, because I have other books I want to write. I want to write a sequel to this book. I want to, like, this is what I'm doing now. I have 2 other books I am writing right now on top of all the stuff I'm doing for the channel, and I have ideas for about 3 other different series that I could go into. Literally 3 days ago, and I had an idea for a totally different book. I got an idea for a sci-fi thing, and the limits of like exploring the theme of the limits of human potential. So yeah, that's a thing. Obviously, making money doing art is the dream. Like, not having the shitty job I have now would be great. Like, being able to make as much money or more money just doing what I enjoy, that would be a dream come true. Gotta stop saying dream. But here's the thing. Publishing a book is often a heartbreaking and years-long experience from what I've heard. It involves a lot of rejection. And to be clear, I want this book published, and I am going to try and get this book published. But I am not going to devote every iota of my effort right now into doing that. I'm going to devote some effort. Definitely this year, I will make an attempt to reach. I know some people, my family, we have some connections. We like know a guy, and I know some other people who know some people. And I'm definitely going to put some feelers out and like try and like work through the process. But I have no illusions about how hard it is to publish a book. There are probably hundreds upon dozens, thousands of people just in the U.S. who are better writers than me that are submitting better manuscripts that maybe could sell better. So, right? So, yeah. I would not fully edit it unless I was like really trying to like send it out. And even then, once you get picked up by a publisher, there's a massive new round of editing you have to do. I'm just talking about editing I'm doing for me before I think it's an even close to releasable product. Because and maybe a lot of people would. I know there's people who get published like who don't even have the book done yet. They send off like the first few chapters to the publisher and they're like, boom, fine. They get a book deal. I don't think I'm good enough to do that. And also like, I'm not doing this to make money, man. I'm doing this because I have a story in my head and I'm doing it because I wanted to. And like, that's the only reason. Like, I do what I want to do. And that's my advice. Like, if you're creative, like, just do what you want to do. Like, do what feels good. Do it, and beyond that, do what pushes you. Like the YouTube channel. A big part of that, like, I get like the book is like pure fun, like pure like just what I want to do. By the way, observe my Monogatari wallpaper. Is good. Crap, I need to go. I gotta do a thing. Okay, so yeah, write for fun. Also, if you think you don't have it in you to write 2,000 words a day, you do. In 2017, I was like, I'm gonna write 500 words a day, and then it was like, I'm gonna write 800 words a day, and then it was like, I'm gonna write 1,000 words a day, and now I can write 3,000 words in a day if I'm focused. It's practice, and it's just going. And like, don't torture yourself. Like. Again, I failed to write books before I wrote this one. Like, do what's fun, do what's good for you, but also keep going and believe in yourself. Push through. There are definitely parts of the book that are like better written than others. Like some parts are kind of stale, some parts are kind of boring, but then like you'll get to a scene that like you were really inspired to write. It's like great all of a sudden. That definitely happens. And again, when you're going back and editing it, you can make the bad parts better. But all right, this is super important. One of my, I think, most useful like things that I had zeroed in when I started this process is never revise a chapter until you're done. Like when I wrote chapter 1, I was like, this is a suck-ass chapter. It's bad. It's got tons of flaws. There's probably tons of grammatical errors and spelling errors on top of just being certain parts being worded badly, worded poorly. Maybe it doesn't. No, screw it. Do not revise. Write chapter 2. Write chapter 3. Write chapter 4. Go on until the end. Because perfectionism is the enemy of completion. Okay? Do not revise until you have a full rough draft. Because it's fine. It's fine if it's bad. Just keep going. Write a whole book. Because if you get stuck in the weeds, if you tear yourself up, if you're cutting, do not use your own art as quasi self-harm, man. Like, if you're beating yourself up over a thing being bad, fixing it is fine. But do not spend massive amounts of time on it. Don't spend a week on it. Don't spend a day on it. Don't spend a month on it. Just keep going. And you can fix it later. Because I cannot tell you how powerful it is to have a... I did this! My brain created this shit! All of this. All these hundreds of pages. I bumped the mic. I'm very sorry. And having a book done... I feel powerful. Like, I feel accomplished. I feel like I can actually do things now. I am no longer an aspiring author. I am an author, and no one will ever be able to take that away from me. And I feel like just so much of a, like... Like, I feel like a real person now. I guess I feel like an adult who does things. And I've never really had that before. And it feels good. Last thing I want to talk about is how I learned about myself psychologically while writing this book. When I was writing as a kid, as a teenager, I often found later that the stuff I was writing, like, kind of reflected my psychological what was going on in my head at the time, like my angst. I still have a lot of angst, by the way. It comes out of my writing. Maybe I always will. I guess we'll work on that. But yeah, throwing my phone away. The main characters in this book ended up being closer to who I am than I thought they would. They ended up involving more of my own mental problems, my own hang-ups. And that was interesting. it's funny that I say it like I didn't have control. Like I could have changed it if I wanted to. It did not feel like that. It still doesn't feel like that. This book does not feel like something that I created. It feels like Michelangelo has a line about the statue always being there. His job is just to chisel the other rock away. I feel like a paleontologist. Um, like like there's a dinosaur fossil like in a rock, and it was always there. I'm just the one who like, you know, dusted the stuff away to get to it. This story always existed. I'm just the first person who gets to read it. And I learned some things about myself. Some of them interesting and some a little disturbing. Uh, I think I could go on a little bit, but I think it's done. This video has ended up being like 50 minutes long. I did not intend that. I did not think I'd ramble this long. My butt is hurting because I have been sitting in the same spot for 54 minutes. If you've listened to this whole thing, I love you. Thank you. I just thought that like I have gained this knowledge and I wanted to share it, these observations. I don't even know if this was like useful. Like, did I even talk about anything interesting? I hope I did. Screw it. You know what? This is going up. I have been Wyatt the War Weaver. Follow me on Twitter if you want access to my brain. Ask me any questions of the process in the comments. I will answer all of them in incredible detail. Like type paragraphs. I will type paragraphs back. I'll do it. It might take me a little bit, but I'll try and do it. New video essay hopefully coming soon because I'm getting faster. I'm sorry the last one took so long. I'm also sorry if you don't like that it was about Magic the Gathering. It was like a fun thing for also follow me on Twitter because I'm gonna put out like an analysis of that video on my Twitter because it's definitely not perfect. Like you could see the mic. You could see the microphone in the shot. Oh, it was so bad. Okay, I'm done. I'm done. I am Wyatt the War Weaver. Y'all be good.